So we're going to jump back in now into Kevin Shields' testimony to the inquiry to see what alternative conclusions were explored as part of the prosecution case against Maureen McKelvey. It's quite clear, and we've seen before, that Suzanne Winter's report is very decisive on a number of occasions and includes the statement that there is evidence to back up the fact that actually this was a deliberate action, that no other conclusion such as human or computer error is possible. And it seems that Kevin Shields tells us and explains to us that computer error was certainly not considered as a possibility by him. Let's jump into the inquiry.
The report goes on to explain what investigations were done by Post Office investigators, having been alerted to the discrepancies identified by the paid order unit.
So this then should clearly be the evidence that backs up this quite damning statement. The overclaims were generated by claiming non-existent pension allowance falls. That's what we'd expect to see here.
The Post Office Limited investigation team, when appraised of the situation, made arrangements to receive the paid pension and allowance pouches forwarded from Clannabogan Post Office to POU Lisahally on behalf of the Benefits Agency. Local checks by the Post Office Limited investigation team revealed overclaims of a similar pattern to those identified by the POU Lisahally. Les Thorpe and Suzanne Winter Consignia investigation team attended Clannabogan Post Office on Thursday the 4th of April 2002, accompanied by John McKenney, a member of the security and audit team. A special audit was conducted by McKenney, and the result of the audit was a shortage of £152.80. At the conclusion of the audit, McKelvey was formally interviewed under Police and Criminal Evidence Northern Ireland Order 1989, Codes of Practice, tape seal numbers, and those are given, in the presence of her solicitor, Stephen Atherton. McKelvey could or would not offer a reason for the discrepancies, and stated she had done everything to the best of her ability. So the summary of Mrs. McKelvey's position in this report was that she could not explain the discrepancies she was being asked about and had made no admissions. Is that fair?
That's a fair assessment, yes.
There are then, starting at the top of this page, some observations made by the investigator. Forgive me, going on to the next stages of investigation, we've reached at this point the first interview. So starting at the top of this page, at the conclusion of the interview, McKelvey was informed further checks needed to be completed of the pension and allowance to establish the final figure of the overclaims.
And that's quite telling wording there, again, which might give an insight into the thought processes of the investigator at the time. At conclusion of the interview, McKelvey was informed further checks needed to be completed of the pension and allowance to establish the final figure of the overclaims. Not to establish whether there was overclaims, but to establish the final figure of the overclaims.
McKelvey and Atherton were invited to observe the checking of the outstanding pensions and allowance pouches. On the 2nd of May 2002, McKelvey and Atherton observed the examination of the pension pouches, and additional overclaims were identified. On completion of the examination of the pension pouches, arrangements were made with Atherton to formally interview McKelvey regarding the additional pension and allowance overclaims identified. On the 27th of May 2002, McKelvey was formally interviewed under Police and Criminal Evidence Northern Ireland Order 1989 Codes of Practice, tape seal number, and that's given, in the presence of her solicitor, Stephen Atherton. McKelvey offered no explanation regarding the additional overclaims identified. McKelvey has made no admissions of guilt in this matter and states she has done everything to the best of her ability. We then come on to some observations made by the investigator, which are as follows. The discrepancies summarised on the pension schedule indicate it is due to deliberate action and not error, and McKelvey is the only person with the appropriate access and opportunity.
So we've got a restatement of the claim there that all other possible explanations, including keying errors, our errors with the computer system are not in play here. It's due to deliberate action, yet we've yet to see any conclusive evidence to back up these conclusions.
Maureen McKelvey has rendered herself liable to prosecution, and in view of the availability of evidence to support such actions, these papers are forwarded for authorisation to prosecute. The accounting aspect in this case is currently £4,623.48 and remains outstanding. There is no reason given here by the investigator for why, she says, the discrepancies summarised on the pension schedule indicate it is due to deliberate action and not error. There is also no reason given for why Miss Winter considered that Mrs. McKelvey had rendered herself liable to prosecution. Did you probe why these conclusions were reached by Miss Winter at this time?
No, I did not.
That's surely got to be something that you do. I mean, fair enough, you take the evidence, you take the investigation at face value, but surely you scrutinise at least some of the evidence which apparently backs up this conclusion, which Suzanne Winter has clearly stated is available here. The question is it actually available, and is it included in the evidence submitted to support the prosecution case?
You say at paragraph 10 of your statement that having considered the evidence on the file, you decided that the test for prosecution was met. There's no reference in Ms. Winter's report to what material was included with the report. Can you recall now whether you were provided with the records of tape-recorded interview with the report from Ms. Winters, or were you reliant on the summary given in the report at the point of taking the decision to prosecute?
No, I had a full transcript of the 3 tape interviews conducted with Mrs. McKelvey.
And did you read through them before you took your decision?
I did.
There was a point towards the end of Mrs. McKelvey's first interview in April where she raised a question over whether there might have been an error on the computer. That isn't mentioned in the précis of facts in Ms. Winter's report, but having read through the transcripts, were you aware of that when you took the decision to prosecute? We can go to it if it would help. It's PNI 701062, and it's page 76, please. So going down, please, towards the bottom of the page of this interview. This is, as I said, towards the end of that first interview. And there's some discussion there of the physical foils on that page. And towards the bottom, the last question on this page, Suzanne Winter says, "Have you anything else you'd like to say, Mrs. McKelvey, before we conclude the interview?" And at the top of the next page, please. "Yes, I do believe I did everything to the best of my ability. I've been doing it for 11 years and I done it right. If there's been an error on the computer, question mark, I've just done that. I didn't mean to do it. That's all I can say." So that gives the context for the reference to error on the computer. Did this have any influence at all on your decision to prosecute?
No.
Did
Mrs. McKelvey, reading that, Mrs. McKelvey said it was an error on her part.
So you understood that to mean she was saying it was error on her part?
Yes.
Rather...
I mean, you could infer it either way, I guess. I mean, what she's trying to say, she seems to be trying to be open, honest, and as transparent as possible with what's happened throughout the record of interviews that we've seen so far, not only now, but in previous videos. But she's essentially saying she doesn't know how this has happened, and that she's tried her best, and that she's not been dishonest, which is obviously one of the components that they are charging her with, that there is some dishonesty involved with a theft from the post office.
Other than deliberate overclaiming?
Yes.
Having read the interview transcript and having interpreted that in that way, did you consider any further the possible explanation other than theft? That there might be errors, human errors, or computer errors that may have caused the discrepancies at the heart of the case?
I considered human error, not computer error.
And why did you dismiss human error?
Because there were that many, they were so pronounced.
I mean, fair enough, he's not a technical expert, and yes, he's right, there are so many. There seems to be many weeks where there's the shortfalls averaging, £100 odd, but all the way as low as 40p. But that could also, from a technical point of view, be indicative of a system that is suffering a malfunction that is recurring again and again. So, although he might not be expected to know that as a non-technical expert, that is certainly a symptom of a system error as well as a symptom of potential overclaiming.
Thank you. That transcript can come down.